Greetings everyone from a beautiful Malaga, where the 22nd annual conference on the European Society of Criminology is taking place. My name is Rok Hacin and I'm assistant professor at the Faculty of Criminal Justice and Security, University of Maribor. It is my great pleasure today that I can introduce my mentor, colleague and friend, Professor Gorazd Mes, a former president of the European Society of Criminology, President of the Management Board of the University of Maribor, and Dean of the Faculty of Criminal Justice and Security. Gorazd, if I remember correctly, you started your career as a local police officer in Slovenia and then continued your studies in the field of conduct disorder studies. How have you how have you become involved with criminology?
Yes, I was a police officer first, and it was a great experience for me because I was able to learn about crime, criminals, deviants, offending from the first-hand experience. But my role was more social because I was in charge of an area and I was a kind of a community policing officer, and I was a kind of a mixture between a police officer and social worker, and that was a great opportunity for me in the beginning of my career. I was also quite curious and I wanted to learn more, so I went to the university. I was young then, and some people said that I was promising, and I completed BA studies in 4 years in conduct disorder studies between 1987 and 91, and then I got a great opportunity to become assistant in criminology at the Higher School of Internal Affairs at the Ministry of the Interior, and I simply continued learning and studying, and it was another coincidence because I had great mentors, and one of the professors invited me to do a study on criminal lifestyle and criminal careers of hardcore prisoners in Slovenia, and then I spent almost 3 years doing interviews with prisoners in the central prison of Slovenia from Monday to Thursday. After 3 years I started putting together all the material, and I wrote my master's thesis, and my mentor was very happy with my work, and he suggested me to go abroad to learn more about this topic, and then I applied for a grant, and I got the grant, and I went to the University of Cambridge, to the Institute of Criminology, where I was a visiting scholar. I upgraded my work, and the next year I published my first book based on my master's thesis. So that was how it began.
Oh, sounds very interesting.
It was.
And how do you see the development of criminology in Slovenia?
Slovenia has quite a long tradition in criminology. We had the first judge for juveniles in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, who's from my perspective, the first Slovenian criminologist. But we also had a great scholar who came from Russia after the October Revolution. And he started teaching criminology at the Faculty of Law at the University of Ljubljana in the 1920s. His works, published between 1927 and 48, when he died, are still evergreen topics. So he also had great students who continued his work. And in 1954, the Institute of Criminology was established at the Faculty of Law in Ljubljana. So this institute has played a significant role in the development of criminological thought and research in Slovenia. I was also very lucky as an undergraduate and graduate student to have professors who worked as researchers there at this institute, and they were my favorite professors. In addition to learning about the state of the art and development of criminology abroad, I think that everyone should have learned about the development of criminology in their country, because nowadays we often forget about the history of different disciplines in our countries, and I always recommend my students to to do this lesson in history of criminological research. I also gave a talk in 2009 at the European Society of Criminology conference about the history of Slovenian criminology, and I think I need to update it a little bit because now it's been 13 years since then, and a lot has happened since then in the field of research and teaching and development, and especially contribution to international criminology.
Oh, well, you mentioned research. In the past 2 decades you have headed or were involved in numerous national and international projects in a variety of criminological fields. What were your favorite topics?
So criminology, as you probably know, not probably, but you know for sure, is a multidisciplinary scientific discipline. It's an eclectic discipline, and it uses all kinds of perspectives in studying deviance, crime, criminals, responses of society to criminality, and so on. So I've been involved in a variety of different projects. Sometimes it looks that you do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then people say that you're not a specialist in a specific field. But I've been doing some research, I've been dealing with some topics for about 30 years. And then I have a kind of adventures, trips to the unknown, to new avenues of research. So I've been doing research on crime prevention now almost 30 years. Yeah, and it's not over. So the more I study, the more I learn, the more new things I realize that there, especially when it comes to international comparative research, you can see that you can also learn from those who are considered to be disadvantaged or not so well developed and so on. To me, the main idea in doing research is to do comparative research, and on the one hand to learn from the best, to transfer a little bit of this knowledge to other people, you know, and also test whether some ideas in mainly Western societies can be applied in other social environments. Because nowadays we can see that many ideas are just transferred or copied directly, copied and pasted, and then you have a lot of unintended consequences in practice and so on. That's the main idea which has been present in all research I have done in the past 30 years. But let's go back to the topics.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the topics is crime prevention. So I was also very happy or lucky because I had several mentors. I had a PhD mentor. Actually, I had 2 PhD mentors. Both of them were psychologists. One of them was also professor of research methods and statistics. And I learned a lot from both of them. And one of them was actually a co-author of the first criminology textbook of the Slovenian authors, but the textbook was not written in the Slovenian language but Croatian. That was in the 60s. So both of them were very experienced. But then at the school where I worked in the 90s, I had another mentor who was director of the Institute of Criminology at the time, Professor Janez Pečar, who I would say had no mercy for me regarding studying and so on. So he had very high standards, and he was sometimes a little bit ambiguous. You know, in the morning he praised my work. In the afternoon he was not very happy with my work, and he gave me new challenges and so on. So I never knew what to expect from him. So this was a kind of I would say a psychological trick to put a lot of pressure on me to make him happy, you know. And at the end, I can tell you that he helped me incredibly a lot, and I'm very grateful to him for everything, because he recommended me to go to do a postdoc at the Institute of Criminology in Cambridge. I'm also grateful to Mike Tonry, who accepted me, and I spent some time there, and after that I published a book, a textbook on basics of crime prevention, which I think is still topical because not much has changed since then, except the use of technology. But normal human relationships and the practice in the field of social control without the use of modern technology is still about the same. So people do not change as fast as the technology can develop and change some practices. But when we talk about regular activities, it's about the same. So this crime prevention has been, I would say, my evergreen topic. Then I started learning about policies, how to create policies, because I was a national correspondent to the Council of Europe for 3 years, and I learned something very interesting, that we researchers easily fall in love with our research. We appreciate it a lot, but when you present it to other audiences, you do not get the expected feedback. Yeah? They usually want to argue with you, they do not agree with you. And when you meet experienced policymakers, it's like meeting people from another planet, because you have to learn their vocabulary, their priorities, and they usually try to simplify your research to the maximum. Yeah?
To become a translator.
Yeah, so it's kind of a translation of research results to on this long line from researchers, policymakers, practitioners to common people or to lay people. So it's sometimes very difficult. It can be very frustrating for researchers to do so, because you spend a lot of time, you spend a lot of energy, you try to be objective as much as possible. You follow research methodology, which can be very strict on the one hand, but on the other hand, sometimes you have to be flexible because there's not enough resources. Sometimes your respondents disappear, the data are not available, and sometimes you have to discuss shortcomings and limitations of research more than the main findings. So that's what can also be frustrating. And when you enter to a political arena with this kind of research, people who actually do not know what research is about, then they blame you that you didn't do a proper job, or you were not professional enough, and so on. And so this was another challenge. So policy making and communication with policymakers, because I think that if we do research projects which I finance from public sources, from the national budget and so on, then we have to give it back to the people, and there must be some positive outcome, not just research for the sake of research. And my idea is also that I do a lot of empirical tests, and also tests of some well-known theories. I think that it's very important to do longitudinal studies when you test some theories and ideas and so on, because I think at least 3 sweeps of the data collection are necessary to draw valid and reliable conclusions. And when I started visiting institutions abroad, once again I was also quite lucky, because I spent a lot of time talking to incredibly good researchers, and they shared a lot of their knowledge and experience with me. You cannot find that in the books, but you learn from people who do real research, do a lot of field work, and it's about knowledge and experience sharing. So it was I call it a fast-track learning experience, because methodological books are usually like recipe books, and it's like my grandmother said, you can have a great recipe, but the main content when you cook something, it's your love to cooking, and it's how you do it. So it's the same with doing research. So one are technicalities, but the other part is how you do it as a person. So this is what I've learned in this process, and if I need to mention the projects I really liked, and I think are, on the one hand, something what is I called like traveling to the future for us at the time. So the first project was of this kind was a European project called CrimPrev between 2006 and 2009, and the main idea of this project was to learn from each other in the field of criminology, of course, in Europe. So it was about crime, criminality, crime prevention, and so on. And I was a member of a steering committee of this project, and again, I was able to learn how my colleagues drafted the project, how the project was coordinated, and this was an additional skill one who does.
The whole recipe, right?
Yeah, the entire recipe, yes. Yeah, and but on top of this, I would say, research project management, the content of this project, it was not a research project, but it was a kind of a exchange of research results, coordinated action kind of project. And it was really good for us, researchers from our school, because we attended seminars, roundtables, and mini conferences, and we caught up with the best in Europe, and we actually learned that we should learn even more and work more to reach the research standards and quality of work and publications, actually publishing and so on. So this was a great experience. So I can tell you something what is very interesting. At the beginning of this project, it was 15 of us who started from our school. At the end, it was just 3 of us who were in the finals of this project, and we contributed 3 small publications, and that was, I would say, a beginning of our real international activity. And at the same time, we also had a 3-year teaching project with Australian universities together with the University of Grenoble and Keele University in England, and we started learning how to teach in English. Because in Slovenia we speak Slovenian language, and if you want to teach properly in English, it's a big challenge. So the first generations of the students from abroad who came to our school made a big mistake. I call it cultural intelligence. They mixed up our kindness and support with our stupidity. And they played all kinds of interesting games, but it was interesting for me because I do criminology, and you know, I like dealing with all kinds of deviants. But this was something what we learned from the first year of this project, that we need to also improve our language skills. Yeah, and as English is lingua franca. Not only in research, but also in the project called Erasmus+, which is the exchange of students and professors and other people working in universities. So I think that English is a must in these activities. And we have been very successful. So we started exchange programs in 2009, immediately after the CrimPrev project, and we are now also participating in several national and international projects. And I can tell you that if I compare our first steps and our present activity, I can be very happy. I'm actually very happy because we have established good partnerships. We work with colleagues who are great scholars. Respect between each other is really good, and I think we are now on the level that we can contribute to European or global criminology much better than 30 or 20 years ago, but it has been a long journey. And one of the places I also have to praise for this huge advancement is our European Society of Criminology conferences, because this is a kind of an annual hub where people meet and exchange ideas. They listen to each other at the panels or working groups of all kinds of projects, and there are also research meetings and so on. I think that we have benefited a lot from the European Society of Criminology conferences. I have also actually did lead a working group on university criminology curricula between 2004 and 2019. That was also a great experience, because I learned a lot about BA programs, master's programs, and PhD programs in criminology, criminal justice, and other disciplines close to criminology and criminal justice. This was also very helpful for us at the University of Maribor, because I was in charge of drafting a new PhD program in criminology and criminal justice now some 18 years ago, 2004, a long time ago. And it was very interesting because of the European Society for Criminology conferences. Colleagues knew me, and I got regional programs, and we tried to do our best and created a very, very nice PhD program. And what is typical for this PhD program is also that we have some graduates, PhD graduates, who completed their dissertations in English, like you. And we also had some visiting professors who gave lectures on this program from all over the world, so this was a great contribution to the quality of our work at our university in the field of criminology.
It is clear that you are not afraid of challenges. If I can ask you another question, parallel to your academic performance and research performance, your leadership and organizational skills were well tested during the years. You practically grew together with the Faculty of Criminal Justice and Security, where you later served as Dean for 2 terms. Can you shed some light on this period of your career?
So we are now in the Dean's office here in Malaga, the Faculty of Law. So my experience as a Dean was that I was like a maiden for all, because you're responsible for everything, you know. On the one hand, you are a pedagogical leader, you are a research leader, you are lead administrator, and so on. And you are the, not just a responsible, but the responsible person of the institution. I really enjoyed when we were growing bigger and bigger and better. And I remember one, I would say, quite bold statement of mine after I came from the UK. I said, I want to have the institute like this one in Cambridge in my home university. And people were laughing, not with me, but at me. And I think that I succeeded some 30% of my initial ambition. And I think that's really a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really a lot.
Great.
And I'm also very happy because I have worked with colleagues who understood my ambition. And it was also very good because colleagues from abroad visited our institution and gave us a positive feedback. Because in the society or in a country like Slovenia, which is very small, if you are not internationally connected, if you are not doing research which is up to date, which is topical and so on, and if you do just local or national research, which is not a very good quality, you can easily fall into some mediocrity. So, but that's also typical for some other environments. So that's not just. But I think that when I talk about my institution, and I'm not exaggerating, I think that we have done a lot of very good projects, but I don't see any bad projects.
That's always good. That's always good.
Yeah.
You also were elected as president of the European Society of Criminology. Can you share some thoughts on this experience? This is an international scale now.
So this was very interesting. I'm sometimes joking when I meet people from abroad and when I see that they are too serious, and I introduce myself as a peasant from a small country, I also do research on rural criminology and rural safety and security and so on. And in the European Society of Criminology, I served several terms as an official, actually as a board member before that. And I learned that the European Society of Criminology has a very important mission. So it's a young society, So it's like colleagues from the United States like to say, it's a younger sister or brother of the American Society of Criminology. Speaking about the age, yes. But when we speak about diversity, when we speak about languages, when we speak about different traditions, when we speak about different histories of the countries and disciplines and so on, we can learn that in Europe we have much bigger challenges than they do have in the United States, because they speak the same language, they write the same language, and what is, again, important to say, English is lingua franca. And for the people who want to be internationally active, basic idea is, or prerequisite is, that you have to learn English first, and then English of criminology and criminal justice and so on, to be able to communicate with colleagues properly. Because sometimes when we translate some terms from our languages, from non-English languages into English, they can sound a little bit funny sometimes, And it's about learning again, so it's an additional learning. And the European Society, to go back to my experiences, has been, to me, a very interesting cultural experience, because the board members were, at the time when I was president, and were from all over Europe. And you learn how nice people actually are interested in helping the society to grow, and how difficult it is sometimes to find a common denominator when you propose some very good idea and people do not accept it. So then you start conversations, and there's a lot of work to convince that it's about good ideas and so on. And one of these challenges was related to the working groups, which are now growing, and another one was about organization of the European Society of Criminology conferences and so on. So there was a lot of interesting debates, and there's one of also very interesting or important, I would better say important. That's the European Journal of Criminology, and the growth of this journal, because it's the leading journal in this field in Europe. And as you heard at the opening of this year's conference, that the majority of criminology and criminal justice journals come are in the United States. So I think we need to develop this field much more active in the future. But it's about the people, it's about their energy, about their motivation, and when I finished my term as president, I felt much more experienced, and I really liked working with everyone. So this was a kind of an enriching experience.
Sounds very interesting.
It was.
Due to your extended collaboration with criminologists around the world, but especially in Europe, as you mentioned, you are frequently referred to as a bridge between the East and the West. Moreover, your opus comprised more than 1,700 works. 1,700 works. So what is your outlook on these differences between countries in the field of criminology? How do you see the future development of European criminology, or better yet, European criminologists
this is too difficult a question for me at the moment, because I think we need another hour to discuss it.
Probably.
But I will try to be as brief as possible. First of all, the main idea of my work is to learn from each other. And whenever I work with people in Slovenia, I say, let's have a meeting at the university. It's a safe ground where we can express our ideas, where we can have a discussion in a civilized manner. That's the most important thing. I think that the position of Slovenia in Europe is also very important because we are in the middle, you know. Some people say that we are in Eastern Europe, but in reality we are in Central Europe. We have a very central position. And we have organized a biennial international conference on criminal justice and security since '96. And I think we have covered almost all contemporary criminological, victimological, penological, and other criminology-related topics in the past 26 years or something. Yeah. And we have participants not just from Central Eastern Europe, but from all over the world. And it's another great opportunity to grow academically, to establish new research partnerships, and to learn from each other. And that's, to me, again, the main idea of conferencing is to learn from each other, to develop something new, and to make new colleagues and even better friends with whom you will work in the future. Yes, I have also helped a little bit my colleagues in the area of former Yugoslavia to develop some research, because I have done quite a lot of research in that region. We have also published several special issues of the journals in English on all kinds of topics. We started in 2008 with a special issue on the development of criminology in Southeastern Europe to learn where we could start from and so on. And then we continued research with the topics on policing, victimology, penology, treatment of prisoners, and all other topics which we are now actually studying in a little bit more profound way.
As a mentor to several doctoral students, not only Slovenians but also from abroad, do you believe they can carry the torch in the future?
You know, this torch is so symbolic. Okay, I believe that every former PhD student of mine and every present is a person who had great ambition to do something in the field of research and grow academically. I have been, again, very lucky to have great PhD students with whom I did a lot of work. I never promised anyone to not to work, you know. Yeah, so it was really a lot of work, and I was very happy with the work of my PhD students, because the majority of them continued my research projects in the past. I did not have time to complete. Yeah, so I can tell you that some of them did even a much better job than I would. Yeah, myself, because it was a mutual project, a kind of a joint project, and it's also very nice when you talk to a person from a younger generation who has different perspectives, is willing to learn a lot, and is very eager to do research. I also set very high standards for junior research fellows who got a grant from the Slovenian Research Agency. They mainly did research, doctoral dissertations in English. They wrote dissertations in English, and it also happened that some of my former PhD students afterwards published monographs in English. And one of my PhD students was also very successful, because her adapted PhD dissertation transferred into a book, actually rewritten, as a book. Has been translated into 7 or 8 languages, I think it's 7 or 8 something, so on crimes against the environment, green criminology and so on. And I think that I have covered many topics which are up to date and reflect the everyday problems of our society, and I think that each of my doctoral students contributed to some extent to the growth of discipline and to their personal growth. And there's something else I would like to add. I think that all of them got a proper job after graduation. This is also very important.
Yes, I can attest to that. Lastly, do you have any fond memories of people who influenced your development in academia?
Oh, so I think that the list would be very long, but if I have to mention some of them, I would really like to mention them. So the first one is Professor Franz Brinz, who was my mentor for my master's thesis, and who convinced me that it would be good to do a study in prisons and learn from prisoners about their way of thinking and committing criminal offenses, and actually what kind of survival strategies they use to survive them. Then my 2 PhD mentors, then my mentor at our school in the 90s, Janez Pečar, who had a great influence on my future development. Abroad, I'm very grateful to Lorraine Gelstorp, who was my first mentor in Cambridge when I was a visiting scholar there, and we are still friends. And there are so many other people from all over the world, and I think if I continue mentioning them, I can speak for another 30 minutes. But I'm really grateful for to every person. I actually did some work together in the past, because I really learned a lot from everyone, and I have a feeling sometimes that I'm a kind of a result of these interactions, and my idea is to share the best I got from them with my PhD students and with my colleagues. So that's my motto.
That's great. Professor Meško, Gorazd, I want to thank you for your time and wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you, Rok.